driving to the Bay Area today, take care of some business. We thought what a great time to chat about what's going on in the real estate market. Shannon and I are in agreement on a lot of things we're seeing, and we have different perspective on some of them. So why don't you go ahead, Shannon? We just read an article by, I'm sorry, I already
Lawrence
forgot.
Yun,
Who is?
the National Association of Realtors chief economist.
And what do you have to say?
It was pretty interesting. Not so much his perspective, but the facts that he reported about the fact that we're inching towards a recession, and it's not going to be your typical recession, because while we are seeing lower affordability and higher interest rates, in fact, people have so much equity in their homes and wages are up. We know inflation is up, but people have basically doubled their wealth in the last 10 years, he says. Equity is up in their homes. And
their portfolios, the S&P 500 is up 70% in the last 5 years.
Right. So it's really hard to understand why so much of the news is reporting something that is scaring people about the market, especially the housing market, because the facts seem to say something different.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just looking this morning at Trend Graphics, which is our local Sacramento Metro market data collection company. And all this talk about the market softening and whatnot for the entire Sacramento Metro region. For the entire Sacramento Metro region in July, month to date, houses that have closed for 5% more than they sold for last July, which, typically people ask us how much should a home appreciate in a year, and in a typical market we would say 3 to 5% is kind of normal.
Right.
So we're in kind of normal. We're not seeing that 20% leap that we saw a couple years ago, but we are also not seeing price depreciation, right? Prices are still higher than they were a year ago.
And on top of that, while there is more inventory, a lot more inventory than we've seen over the last couple of years, there's still about half as much inventory as there had been in past normal markets. So, supply and demand, seems to me that I would not expect prices to start tumbling or even going down. I think what we're seeing is, some sellers had very sky-high expectations and priced their homes for sale sky-high and are realizing that this is a more normal market, and so they're having to reduce their prices to get back into the normal market, but those prices are still higher than they were last year.
And this is kind of where Shannon and I diverge a little bit. I think, prices are going to go up and down depending on when you bought your home, right? So if you bought a year ago and you're trying to flip it and make a bunch of money, I think you're going to struggle to do that. On the other hand, the exact same house, I love this story that I read somewhere. You have the exact same house side by side or down the street from each other, which, we tend to have very similar homes in El Dorado Hills down the street from each other. One buyer bought his house last year, one buyer bought his house 10 years ago. The guy who bought his house last year wants to sell his house for $1.5 million because that's what he needs to make money. The guy that bought 10 years ago, he could sell his house for $1.4 million and make a lot of money. So which house is worth more? Well, they're worth whatever the market's going to say, but the guy from 10 years ago is going to be a lot happier about his $1.4 million than the guy from last year.
Right. And that just goes back to, real estate. You usually want to hold your real estate longer. 5 years, 1 or 2 years, it's obviously harder to predict what's going to happen.
Yeah, there's a lot more risk in the short term than the long term, right?
Right.
But pricing, that's really an interesting conversation right now because we are seeing a lot more price drops than we've seen in the past. In fact, about half the homes in the market have had to drop their asking price. Now let's be careful, that's not the same as selling a home for a loss, right? So I think people kind of get confused about that, right? They see, oh, they dropped their price. That doesn't mean that sales prices are down, right? We just said that sales prices are up 5%, even though half the people have had to lower their asking price to get that 5% increase over a year ago. So what that really means is that expectations need to be adjusted by sellers. And I always think that sellers lag buyers in every market, right? So when the prices were going up, what was happening? Sellers were pricing for a certain point, but buyers were telling them that their home was worth more than they were asking for it by bidding the home above asking price. Now we kind of have the reverse. Sellers are listing their home for a certain price and buyers are telling them, well, your home is actually worth a little less than you're asking for it. That doesn't mean it's worth less than it would have been a year ago, right? It means it's worth less than they think it's worth today. Right. So it's important to have that perspective when you see statistics like the number of price drops in the market.
Exactly. Yes, and now it makes sense when you're thinking about selling your house to think about listing it under what your competition is listed at.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing to think about, and what we're talking to our clients about, is what are your comps right now? And if you're looking at comps of what homes in your neighborhood sold for over the last 6 months, that's a traditional way to look at market value. But in a market like we're seeing right now, you might want to look more broadly than that than just sales. You might want to also look at what is active on the market in your neighborhood or in your price range, and how long have they been on the market? How many are selling in that price range per month? So here's one analysis to think about. Let's say we'll go back to 1.5 million because that's the number we used before in the other house. You're going to sell your house. You put your house on the market for 1.5 million. How many homes are there on the market today for 1.5 million? Let's say there's 10, just to use round numbers. Okay. Now, how many homes have sold for 1.5 million in the last 3 months? Let's say there's 9. Okay. So on average, we're seeing 3 homes sell per month for 1.5 million, right? So if you want your home to sell this month for 1.5 million, it has to be one of the 3 best homes in that price range.
Right.
Now, that's sometimes hard to evaluate, but sometimes if you look at the comps, you go, well, And then you have to find the range where your home will sell in a month.
Right. Not an easy thing to do, but doable.
Well, it's what we do for our clients, right? You don't have to do it. We'll do it for you, right? And then we can, help you make a decision based on different prices, right? And say, okay, at this price, it looks like, it might take this long to sell. This price might take that long to sell. This price, you might not sell it at all, and you're going to have to drop it down to this price. But the other thing to keep in mind, this is something that we hear all the time from sellers, and it's only normal to think this way. People say, well, I only need one buyer, or somebody could lowball me, right? Somebody could offer less. But the reality is that people aren't as likely to do that, especially when you first come on the market. if you're first, let's deal with the first one. If you're marketing to a market of one person, one family, that's really tough to find. Now, certainly it can happen. There could be somebody who walks through your door and absolutely falls in love with your house and has to have it. And I can tell you that we saw a lot of that over the last 2 years. And I can also tell you we're seeing a lot less of that today. So marketing to a market of one, really tricky. Lowballing. You know, people are uncomfortable lowballing. They don't want to offend sellers. Now, if your home's been on the market for 30, 60, 90 days, you're much more likely to get a lowball offer because you've probably been overpriced, right? If you've been on the market for 10 days or 15 days or even 3 weeks, sellers are going to be a little more reticent to come in where they think your home is worth. They might come in a little low.
Buyers.
Buyers. They might come in a little low. But then, you know, they probably would have found you by now already. So if you're not getting offers, there's always 3 things that you should look at. There's 3 important factors to marketing, right? The product, right? We talked about how does your house compare to other homes in your price range. So how is the product? How's the price? Are you priced like other homes like yours? And then the last one is promotion. How is your home being marketed? Is your agent marketing your house? How are they marketing your house? What sort of descriptions are they using? What are they doing to get people in your house? And different agents have different strengths in what they do. We would love to talk to you about some of the things we do that are quite different from others. But that doesn't mean we're the only ones that know how to market a house. But I will tell you that a lot of agents lag behind the market in what they could or should be doing to get people in the door.
That's all I have to say on the subject.
Well, how about just in closing, summarize? I mean, you know, what do you feel is going on in the market?
I think today is still a good time to buy and a good time to sell. I think whenever you're ready to buy or sell, when you're ready to make a move, it's always a good time. It's always a different market. But for buyers today versus buyers 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, it seems like there is a little less competition, and probably that's seasonal as much as anything. And there's a little more inventory. So if you're looking to buy, you should definitely not give up. You should be out there looking to see if the right house is out there. Have a good lender or have your cash ready, whatever the case may be. We have lots of resources. We can certainly help with that. And same with sellers. We have all the resources needed to help you do what you need to do. Our goal is always to give you all the information so that if you do want to sell your home quickly, you know what you need to do, you know what to expect, and we help you get it done.
Yeah, you said a couple things there that I think are interesting. First of all, you know, normal. I don't know what a normal market is, and I went back and I looked at all the data, and if you look on our Facebook page, you can look at I pulled the last 6 years worth of June data just to try and figure out what a normal market is, and no 2 years were alike, right? So what is a normal market? I don't know what a normal market is. I think markets are dynamic, and so they're always going to be changing. They're always going to be either prices are going to be going up or prices are going to be going down. Inventory is going to be going up. Inventory is going to be going down. Sales are up. Sales are down. It's constantly in flux. It's never going to be the same month after month after month. We just went through a very unusual market. Now it's easier to spot unusual markets than it is normal markets, right? So the last 2 years was a quite unusual market. There was a huge shift in workforce where people were able to work remotely and in many cases even encouraged to work remotely. And I'm a believer that the remote workforce will be with us for a long time. It may not be 5 days a week remote, but I think that people are going to have a lot more flexibility, being able to work from home. That benefits a place like El Dorado Hills, where we are still considerably better priced, and I think a better quality of life than the Bay Area. And so I think we'll continue to see people coming from the Bay Area to our market with the ability for them to work remotely. There's a lot of things that drive micro markets, our market compared to national markets, right? Not every market's going to be the same or react the same. So there are great benefits to El Dorado Hills: the lifestyle, the schools, the beauty of the area, the affordability, all the reasons we're all there, right? And there are a lot of reasons to not want to be in the Bay Area for a lot of people, which is why, again, a lot of us are in El Dorado Hills.
That's for sure.
So if you're thinking of buying or selling, don't let the market frighten you. Let's talk. I think that there's great opportunities. It just takes a different approach than it took over the last couple of years, and it might feel a little more scary, but it's still going to be, I think, a successful outcome for buyers and sellers in this market. It's much more equal to both sides than it was for the last 2 years, where the sellers held all the cards.
Exactly.